When bacteria die in your gut, they release toxins, and that can give you serious diarrhea on the ketogenic diet. It's not uncommon to experience diarrhea when you first start on a ketogenic diet, or even after you've been on a keto diet for a while. And there's a few very clear fundamental reasons as to why this happens, and they're quite honestly fairly easy to correct with a little tweaks here and there. Okay, diving right in, the first thing is going to be bile acids. Okay, when you first start keto, you have to upregulate your production of bile. Okay, now bile is an emulsifier. It's sort of like laundry detergent. It emulsifies oil so that it can get absorbed. So suddenly you increase your fat content, bile generation has to uptick, and that's going to trigger a bunch of different issues. Now, there was a study that demonstrated that just being on a ketogenic diet alone upregulated the genes that are associated with bile acids. So you start producing more bile the moment that you get into ketosis. Now, what ends up happening with this is these bile acids get into the colon and they lubricate the colon. So suddenly your stools are loose. The quickest way to get around this one issue is to slowly add in your fats. Now, it goes against the grain of what a lot of the mainstream over-marketed hype sells, and that says to add a bunch of fats in the beginning to get you into ketosis. That's not the rule. You don't have to do that. You're better off to start off with lower amounts of fat and increase as you go so your digestive system gets a break. If your gut can handle it, you're good to go. Okay, the other piece is a big one, and that's just your enzyme portfolio. What I mean by that is you have a portfolio of enzymes that are designed to break down what you generally eat. So if you are usually eating a standard American diet or eating a bunch of carbs, then you're going to have a portfolio of enzymes that are just phenomenal at breaking that stuff down. The moment you switch gears over to a higher fat protocol, well, you don't have a portfolio of enzymes to support the digestion of those fats just yet. So you're lacking some of the lipase or some of the overall digestive enzymes to break down fat. So what ends up happening? Well, the fat ends up not getting broken down and it goes into the colon. But it doesn't mean that you just start pooping out globs of fat. It doesn't work like that. What happens is the fat that sits in your colon draws in water through what's called a hydrophilic reaction, passive diffusion. So water gets attracted to the fat because the fat, well, not attracted, that's like a law that wouldn't really work, but basically the colon recognizes that there's fat that shouldn't be there. So it brings water in an effort to flush it out. So it flushes it out and you get watery diarrhea. But then what happens as a secondary effect is you end up depleting your electrolytes, which throws off that whole system again. Electrolytes don't just constipate you if they're out of whack, they cause diarrhea because it messes up the whole contraction of your gut. So it messes up how your gut mucosal layer works, how your actual movement, the migrating motor complex, it's called, all kinds of things. One of the ways you can get around this is temporarily using digestive enzymes until you start feeling better. My recommended digestive enzymes are down below. I usually use Sun Warrior's digestive enzymes just because they're a lot more of a complete profile. So I always keep them on hand for whenever I start to either A, get constipated, or B, get diarrhea on the ketogenic diet. I just think it's probably the most diverse one. They're also a big supporter of this channel, so a big shout out to them. But anyway, there's a link down below if you want to give them a shot. I highly recommend them. So in addition to increasing fat slowly, and in addition to adding good quality digestive enzymes, there's another piece that you have to pay attention to, and that's the fact that your microbiome shifts a little bit. Okay, there's a study that demonstrated that when you first go on a ketogenic diet, your gut microbiome diversity decreases significantly. Now, it does this for the first 2 weeks. So what ends up happening is when your gut diversity decreases, it means you've had a die-off of some of the bacteria that would normally feed on carbs. When they die off, they release toxins. And again, that draws water into the colon to flush them out. The good news is, after 2 weeks on a ketogenic diet, bacteria levels stabilized, and after 24 weeks on a ketogenic diet, they actually surpass what they were at the beginning. So if you just stick with it and you use some of the protocols to at least help ease some of the diarrhea and make sure you're replenishing electrolytes and you can get through a few weeks of it, you usually start to get better. The other piece is going to be fiber. Okay, so when we first start a keto diet, we're doing two things. We're either dramatically reducing fiber, which creates a blockade in the colon where only water can get by, so you're just pooping out diarrhea, but you're not pooping out the actual bulk. That's a common issue. The other side of the equation is too much fiber. All of a sudden you're eating a bunch of almonds, you're eating a bunch of things that have phytic acid and a bunch of fiber like that. Well, your body doesn't know how to react to that. That's a lot to digest, so passes it out. So you may want to just consider having little bits of fiber with every meal versus having a large bolus of almonds or something like that at one time. Then the last thing that's very important is people suddenly implement raw foods that they wouldn't normally have. Raw almonds, again, all these nuts that are raw that people aren't used to having. Raw veggies, okay? Some of the sulfur containing compounds that are in broccoli can trigger gastric distress. So all of a sudden you start having broccoli. You have to make these shifts slowly. The best thing that you can do is eat a very similar diet to how you would normally eat, just remove the carbohydrates at first and indoctrinate that way. So just to recap, start with lower fat and inch your way up every week a little bit more. Okay, add digestive enzymes until the problem goes away and then wean off of them. Microbiome, you just have to be patient, but you could take some probiotics that might help you out with that as well. Okay, then we have to modulate fiber. Try to lean towards insoluble fiber a little bit more than soluble fiber in the beginning. So avoid the chia, the flax right when you first start out. And then lastly, avoid the raw veggies and it will help you out a lot. As always, keep it locked in here on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. I'll see you tomorrow.